Hello Libra, and welcome to your basically bi-monthly reading. We're doing the new to full moon. It's a special edition this time around. We're doing a little bit of a different reading because we've got some astrology happening that is notable this particular phase. And feeling like another shuffle. So we're going to use some of the same kind of cards that we have been using, but we're also going to be taking a look at what we can glean from this solar eclipse and how we can still work with the waxing energy that's happening. So it's not an astrology video, so obviously I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about it, but I am going to mention two particular transits that are happening on the 19th and on the 21st. So during this waxing phase of the moon, feeling that card there, what we're dealing with, and also just the Mercury retrograde, right? So, oops, there we go. I'm feeling that. Normally I was like, I don't know. Yeah, I'm feeling it. So here we go. All right. And we're also going to pull some spiritual advice cards. Actually, I'm feeling a little bit more playful kind of cards here. If you guys have ever seen me with this particular deck, I love this deck. However, it is so long for my fingers to reach around to shuffle. So let's get some spiritual advice for Libra Sun or Libra Rising. Feeling this for this card up here. All right. Definitely not. You guys see what I mean? It's a little bit hard to shuffle these, but let's pick a card for my Libras for spiritual advice. And we'll see if we pull any kinds of clarification cards, but we're going to stick with this for right now. So let's start off by just really quickly going through. Normally these readings for the new to full, full to new moons are about 5 to 8 minutes long-ish. These are going to be a little bit longer. I'm noticing they're averaging about 15 minutes. So let's just get into it. So basically on April 19th at 9:13 p.m. Pacific time, we have a new moon solar eclipse that is happening in Aries in the tropical astrology, and it also happens to be in Aries in sidereal. For those of you who follow and understand what that means, it's not very typical. Whenever I see that that is happening, usually they're about one sign away. So whenever I see that that's happening, I was just like, okay, that feels to me very congruent, right? That to me is when the energy is really coming through very strongly. So we not only have that going on, it's very close to the North Node, and it's squaring this particular, even though it's out of sign, it's only 1 degree away, so it's squaring Pluto. Don't mind the jargon if you don't understand what that means, but for some of you who understand what that is, great. If not, don't worry, I'll explain a little bit about it as I'm going through your cards. So, and then we also have a couple of days later on the 21st of April at 1:35 a.m. Pacific time, we have Mercury going retrograde in Taurus in the tropical astrology, and it will be in Aries in sidereal astrology. So lots of fire going on, definitely. For those of you who don't know what sidereal is, if you don't know what it is, don't worry about it. You're probably, if you're watching horoscopes, typically people are accustomed to listening to people talk about astrology from the tropical perspective. So don't worry about any of that. If you don't know what sidereal is, then just go with the with the tropical. So we're gonna take a look at like how can we focus this reading, like what area of life or what themes of life are these pointing to? This particular solar eclipse that's happening with the new moon here, this is like, it has some interesting transits that are occurring in the sky. I'm not going to go through all of them, but what I will say is that it can feel like this really big activation happening in your chart. So to know where in your chart that's happening, if you're familiar with your chart, take a look at where Aries is and what house that's hitting. That's where you're going to see the activation really happening. Also for Mercury going retrograde, if you follow tropical, look at where Taurus is in your chart. If not, look at where Aries is in your chart if you follow sidereal. If you don't know what that is, I'm going to be putting out a reel on my Instagram to just tell people like how to actually do that. All right, so without further ado, I'll give you a little bit more details as we go forward, but let's just get into it. So Saturn is what we see showing up here for your theme, right? For what you are being, how we're going to focus this reading, what the themes are that are coming up for this particular phase from this new moon solar eclipse until the next full moon that's happening, right? So Saturn is definitely the master of time, right? This is the timekeeper, but this is also like your career, your purpose, your work, where you want to master things in the world. This is about maturity and integrity and mastery. It can be a little bit karmic. So this is what we're looking at. Often people associate Saturn directly with career and work. And yes, it can be, but this is just about like where integrity is occurring in your life, like where your attention needs to be drawn with that. Also, like what are you committing to? What are you devoted to? What are you looking to really mature in your life and to master? Whether that is like maturing in relationships, maturing in communication, maturing in your chosen purpose path, right? So I know that this isn't specifically speaking to like if this is like work or love or whatever it is, but this is the theme. These are the main themes that are coming up for you and how in what we're dealing with for you. So apply that. I think that if you hear about those themes, you probably know immediately like where in your life this is actually applicable to, right? So then we take a look at a shadow card, which I feel the reason that I'm pulling a shadow card is because when we're looking at eclipses, specifically this one too, but when we're looking at eclipses, it's eclipsing out the light. And whenever we have something eclipsing out the light, it casts shadows, which means that usually like our internal skeletons in the closet shadows, things that we try to like sweep away and not look at, especially because it's going to be squaring with Pluto, are probably going to be felt, right? Like there's potential for a lot of things to start. Solar or eclipses basically usher in a lot of new things and then they usher out, like very much like tide, bringing it in and getting rid of, right? And that's the eclipse season. That's why most people go, uh-oh, it's eclipse season. What's going to happen, right? So we have 2 eclipse seasons per year. This is the first of this year. The next eclipse is going to be a lunar eclipse on May 5th. We'll talk about that later. But when that happens, because this is squaring Pluto and because of it can, even though it can bring in like activations, that activation can, think about whenever something gets activated, there's a lot of energy inside of that, right? And it can kind of maybe like shake down the tree a little bit and maybe jostle up some of the shadows that we're dealing with. Obviously, because this is a collective reading for Libra Sun or Libra Rising, it's not going to land for every single Libra that's out there because it's a collective reading. So if this is your message and it resonates, awesome. If not, and this is your sun sign, check out your rising. If you really want to get specific and granular, like really, really detailed, I'd say book a reading with me, and that's the way to do it. So that's why I'm pulling a shadow card, is because what kind of shadow is most presented and most prominent to work with during this particular eclipse season, because this is the start of the eclipse season, right? Like it's not like you'll just deal with this from the new to the full moon. This will be a theme that's carried out through eclipse season, through the next one that's on May 5th, right? So we want to just be able to like, you know, take a look at, and not just beyond, I'm sorry, not, what I meant to say is not just to the May 5th lunar eclipse, but it also is going to extend for reasons that I won't go into because it'll be too long. It'll extend for the next 18 months, essentially. There will be things that we'll be dealing with. So this could be a shadow that you're just dealing with for the eclipse season. It could be something that you're dealing with for a longer period of time, right? So we have envious gluttony that is showing up as a shadow aspect. Now, keep in mind, like, dude, we're all human, right? We all have shadows. We all have things that we would prefer not to look at and that we just kind of like sweep away as if they're no big deal and we don't have to deal with them. If this feels triggering or it feels like it's provoking you in some way, good, it's doing its job, it's meant to. So, you know, just know I've felt that way with these cards before. But when we're taking a look at envious gluttony, what we're seeing here is like, where are you perhaps having these shadows around voracious consumption, and mainly to achieve maybe something that you feel envious of with regard to other people, maybe not specific people in your life, maybe specific people, maybe just the world at large. But like, I find that envy is actually one of the shadow aspects that is super informative, because when we experience that feeling of I want that, and I have these feelings of envy around it, we can recognize that we have options and choice. We can say, okay, well, there's something I perceive that they have that I want, that I don't think I have, or that I may not think I have access to, or that I can get. How can I go about starting to create that in my life so that I can get that fulfilled? But not to do it from a place of greed and gluttony, essentially, right? The way that it's talking about here. And again, we're all human. It comes in different ways. But specifically, the reason why I think that this is really potent is because we're talking about also the North Node is going to be really close to this particular new moon eclipse, right? And the North Node, for those of you who don't know, just really quickly, the North Node is like basically like excess, right? It is that voracious appetite. And so it's kind of interesting that we have gluttony as coming up, right? Where it's like this appetite to consume, to be better, to like beat people, to like, because we're envious, because we want to like be number one, maybe. That's one example of it, right? So take that as you will, and apply that to the themes that have to do with integrity, that have to do with mastery, that have to do with where you're applying yourself and trying to be dedicated to. You know, where might you have things that are kind of in the way? This is your chance to kind of like work with these energies and sweep it out. When we're able to work with some of the shadowy aspects during eclipse season especially, and we can like do the personal growth work, then it's maybe not going to be as intense and feel like like something is being pulled away from you when the tide goes out, right? So just some examples. And then what we have for your spiritual advice here is the Two of Cups. You know, typically known as a soulmate card, but this is also a card of recognition with you and another person, and being able to like someone that you really connect with. Like, you guys can speak each other's language, you guys really get each other, like whether that is like mentally, emotionally, trauma wise, like whatever it is, there is this connection that you have with another person. Now, this could be related to business, right? It could be related to career. For sure, it could be about that there is this partnership and indicating that. But given that this is your spiritual advice, I'm feeling like there is some kind of maybe connection that this particular card is connected to, like a relationship, a friendship, somebody in your life where maybe you have this connection. And it's like, look at the contrast here. It can be a really beautiful connection of sharing and recognition and seeing each other's strengths and really uplifting each other and being connected in that way. And if that's not specific to a person that you can feel in your life right now, then what I would say is, okay, then this is about finding those connections that feel this way, that don't feel like there is this envious kind of darkness that's there. Finding the people where it's like you guys just really understand and get each other more than other people do. Like, this is the kind of connection where it's like, man, it's like coming home. Like, this person really understands and gets me. I barely have to say much and they really get me. They really feel me. They really understand me, you know, and this energy exists. So if that's not something that you have with certain people in your life, then I would encourage you to look for the connections that you can have that bring this in, right? So we can get actually one more card for that, because I feel like I want just a little bit extra information for you guys. All right, so I can see that we're already nearing on 15 minutes, you guys. So I'm going to try to be really quick. Yeah, I think that there's a connection for some of you Libras out there where, you know, like you have this kind of connection with this person, and it feels like you have some of those qualities I was talking about, but there's, for some reason, there is like this underbelly of like envy that, you know, you have maybe some envy. And like, you know what? Let's normalize that people are people, you know, like you can be envious of friends, and that does happen from time to time, and we all just want to feel good and happy and celebrate our friends and their successes or who they are. And sometimes it's really just about like, you know, we're human, and we just got to go, oh man, like I don't want to be envious of my friend. Like, what can I do? What work can I do internally to clean that up so that we can have like this really just pure connection that we have, right? Because, and the reason that I say this is because when we have the 5 of Pentacles showing up, it's like, look, dude, you're not a victim, right? Like you are not someone who is like out in the cold and you have to do it all alone and like nobody gets you, nobody understands you. You have somebody, at least one person in your life who really does get you and understand you. So I feel like this is definitely very specific for like a handful of Libra sun and Libra risings. Obviously, this isn't going to be for every single person, but definitely for a few of you out there, I'm feeling like this is more specific to a person. Like now that I have this card, it feels very clarifying. It's like, look, you're not out in the cold. You have this, and you just have some like kind of, you know, it's some messier, dark, shadowy, kind of twisty energy that's like underlying and like the underbelly. And you just need to clean that up so that you can really have this connection in its purest sense, because it is a good connection. So that's what I would say. And, you know, that's, I think, relating back to what we're talking about with Saturn, that I feel like that makes a lot of sense, because Saturn, part of Saturn is having that integrity and that commitment to a connection, to a friendship, right? The commitment to being in integrity and clearing things out. So that's what I would say for that. I also wanted to look really quickly at, you know, this is a time for like the moon is still waxing, right? Despite like that we have it's the beginning of eclipse season and we have, you know, Mercury retrograde starting. This is still a waxing phase. And I still feel like you can utilize that momentum, that building, waxing energy, right? To build upon. It just is going to look different this particular like stretch of it, right? I do not recommend doing any rituals, ceremonies, intention setting, vision boarding, like any of that kind of stuff that you would normally do for a new moon. I would not recommend it. Eclipses, and like many astrologers agree, like many past teachers have said this, like you can read about this, just it is not recommended, because the energy when the light gets eclipsed like that at a time where it's not normally the case, right? It's an out of time kind of space. It's very chaotic energy, and you cannot control chaos. No matter how much your ego tells you want to, you cannot control chaos. Right? And so it's not really a time. This is more of a time to like sit back and see like what pops up, what gets activated, what unfolds. And then I would say, you know, just looking at maybe a few days after, you know, like maybe on the weekend. I know that that's after Mercury retrograde starts. Don't be afraid of Mercury retrograde. You can totally still set intentions during Mercury retrograde or do a ritual. It's just that you go a little bit slower pace. You make sure that you revisit, revise, review, slow it down, double check, like, is this what I really want? Is this what I really want to create? That kind of a thing. So you can still work with this energy. And if you are working with this energy, what we have showing up here for where you should put your attention in, as far as like what to seed or what to grow, what to wax, what to maximize, is the 7 of Laurels. So definitely an earth card, very much the 7 of Laurels. I feel like it's still time to put in the work, right? Like you're not done. And you need to have some patience. You're in a building phase, and that's fine. You know, like you've been working on your garden, tending to your garden. You might start to, like, you might be in a phase right now where you're starting to see the fruits of your labor. Like you're starting to see like, oh yeah, things are starting to click, but you're not there yet. Like this 7 of Laurels is really just like, okay, you need to still have some patience. You're still, if you're studying something, then you're studying, or you're building a foundation, you're growing something, whether that's a business or a home or like whatever it is, but it's going to require a little bit more time. But that's where to put your attention, is on that, is like continuing to put in the work, continuing to put in your time with this. And the spiritual advice that's coming through for you is the Knight of Swords. And the Knight of Swords is definitely, like, all of the knights are very action oriented. the spiritual advice that's coming through for you is like, take slower action. You know, it's especially going to be like with all this Aries energy, this very like combustible cardinal energy that's going to be present. It can feel like we want to just like rush in, right? We just want to like fire, right? Just like rush in and do things and like say the thing and get the thing done. And I'm not saying not to move forward. I'm saying that you need to slow your pace down, you know, especially because we're going to have that Mercury retrograde that's happening at the end of the week there on the 21st. And so this is like, yeah, take action, but don't rush in too quick. You need to think first, pause, think first before you speak, for sure, because this is swords has to do with our communication, our thoughts, processes, our beliefs, right? So you want to make sure that, especially with when you're speaking, and because like we're talking about Mercury, right, that has to do with communication. It's not just communication, but it has to do with communication. So during this period, it's especially important. Your spiritual advice is like, hey, slow your roll, pause before you send that text, pause before you make that call, before you have that conversation, before you take action, before you rush in. It's not act first, think later, not right now. There's a time, place for that, but this is not that time. So just so you know, that's what's up for you. I know this was a little bit longer reading. If you really want to get like maybe a more full picture, I always say like, hey, check out your monthly reading for the month of April. I'll have that up on the screen here. And like I said, you can always book a personal reading with me. So make sure to like, subscribe. It really helps out me and my channel here because I'm building this, but also so that you know when the next videos are coming out, especially because I have a lot more on the horizon this year. So want to make sure that you don't miss anything. All right, have a good one. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.